Former Vice President Joe Biden says he no longer supports the Hyde Amendment. The Democratic presidential candidate had been facing sharp criticism from members of his own party over the last 2 days. He reversed his position at a DNC event Thursday night.
I've also, for many years, and let me say this before you start to clap or boo, is that for many years as U.S. Senator, I've supported the Hyde Amendment like many others have, because there was sufficient monies and circumstances where women were able to exercise that right, women of color, poor women, women who are not able to have access, and it was not under attack as it was then, as it is now. But circumstances have changed. I've been working through the final details of my health care plan, like others in this race, and I've been struggling with the problems that Hyde now presents.
The original version of the Hyde Amendment passed in 1976. It was one of the first major abortion restrictions to be signed into law after Roe v. Wade. The Hyde Amendment bans the use of federal funds to pay for abortions. The original version allowed an exception to save the life of the woman. Later versions added exceptions in cases of rape or incest. CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins me now on the phone. Ed, this is a remarkable turn of events. Biden is reversing his campaign's position just a day after being attacked for it by some of his rivals. What does this sudden reversal signal about his campaign?
Sure. Well, first of all, you've done a good job there of explaining what exactly this is, a long-standing sort of status quo policy on abortion rights and how the federal government might or might not pay for it. It enjoyed bipartisan support, really broad bipartisan support, until 2016, when for the first time the Democratic Party enshrined in its platform support for repealing the Hyde Amendment and making Medicaid money, because that's essentially what is at issue here, is Medicaid money, available for abortion counseling and abortion services. But Biden had maintained and has throughout his vice presidency, when he ran for president back in 2008 briefly, and before that he was a supporter of the amendment. What happened is there were some reports this week that sought to clarify and explain his position on abortion, because last month he was stopped at an event in South Carolina by a woman working with or supportive of the ACLU, who asked him about the Hyde Amendment and whether he still supported it. He said to the woman, no, that has to go. But his campaign later clarified that he claims he misheard the woman and thought she was speaking about another policy that essentially bans U.S. foreign aid from being used to pay for abortion services or abortion counseling overseas. If you're a non-government organization, for example, working in Latin America or Africa or other parts of the world. They said, no. That's not what he meant. He still supported it. Well, he announced that yesterday, that he still supported the amendment. Women's rights groups, abortion rights groups that have long supported him essentially threw him under the bus, as did the rest of the Democratic presidential field. The irony is, however, that anyone running for president right now who is or has served in Congress has supported legislation that reaffirms and keeps on the books the Hyde Amendment. That would be Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Beto O'Rourke, Eric Swalwell, Tim Ryan. Despite them saying they don't like it, they have voted to support it because it's always been tucked into those big bills that have to pass and deal with other issues. But either way, this shows that the presumed Democratic presidential frontrunner understood tonight that he ran the risk of being seen as at odds or running counter to the beliefs of vocal elements of his party, women's groups, minority groups, and certainly abortion rights groups, who are all key elements of not only the party when it comes to turning out voters, but also donors. And the fact that he was speaking tonight at a rally in Atlanta, hosted by the DNC, again, the party formally opposes this law, at a DNC event designed to build support among black voters, is no mistake. Critics of the Hyde Amendment say it disproportionately affects low-income and minority women because they might be reliant on Medicaid, and makes it harder for them to be able to access abortion services. So, quick sign or a quick reversal and a sign that they understood that on this and potentially on other issues, Biden is quite vulnerable to deeper scrutiny and criticism in the weeks leading up to the first debate.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there any way to gauge at all how damaging this could potentially be for Biden's campaign?
All I know, Elaine, is having spoken with some of his aides in the last 24 hours, several of them, they made clear that the incoming on this was pretty intense and pretty bad. And that while there might be some hypocrisy here from especially some of his opponents who, whether they like to admit it or not, have voted for reaffirming this law in the past, they understood that it was perhaps the biggest opening yet for the rest of the field to really turn their fire on the front runner and see if they could start poking some holes in his wide lead. Remember, he enjoys double-digit support or double-digit advantages over second-place Bernie Sanders right now in national surveys, in surveys in Atlanta, in Iowa, in New Hampshire. He has a lead on the president right now, hypothetically, in Texas, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan. He seems to be indestructible. And so just in the last 24 to 36 hours, the rest of the field has realized, wait, this might be our moment to try to pick apart that lead. And it seems that the Biden camp, at least, is trying to very quickly turn things around and blunt those attacks.
You talk about this opening for the other candidates. We are just weeks away from the first primary debates. I mean, what does this mean for the rest of the 2020 field? Is there a risk that some may find it a little bit too early yet to have this kind of fight take place at this stage?
No, and I think that was most indicative to me, frankly, in your interview last night with Beto O'Rourke. The fact that for the first time he took on one of his opponents by name,
right,
and so starkly called them out for being incorrect on this issue, at least in his view, I think is a sign that he understands and others understand that if they're going to make some run at Biden, they've got to do it. And this was a sort of tailor-made opportunity delivered to them on a silver platter. The rest of the field is struggling. Their wheels are spinning. The money isn't coming in the way it might have been at the start. Their poll numbers have stagnated. They've got to find a way to break through. And I think what this signals, or should signal, is that first debate is going to present whoever is on stage with Biden a real opportunity to go after him. And if he's not on stage with him on the other night, because remember, there's 2 nights of debates,
right,
and half the field is on one stage and half the field's up the next night, they will call him out in absentia, and he'll have to respond for that, and we'll see how well he holds up.
All right, Ed O'Keefe for us. Ed, thank you.
Take care.